So we have an icebreaker. Sorry, we got two computers. We don't want to have too much feedback. We have an icebreaker for you guys here. So imagine that you are 30 years old. I know, right? Such a long time in the future. And you have completed your degree, training, or apprenticeship. Life is going well. What job do you hope to have? Doesn't matter if it seems like a far stretch right now. We want to know what your dream job is and what it, what would it be if you knew absolutely nothing was stopping you. So just to
so feel free to put that in the chat or unmute yourself if you would like to do that.
We got bakery owner. I wonder who said that. Photographer, storyboard artist. These are dope. Computer programmer, that's what's up. Animator, dope. Yeah, dope. These are all very, very neat careers. I never see people with these kinds of goals or these kinds of dream careers.
Ooh.
Psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. Okay, I see you. I see you. I like that. I like that. Anybody else? Mine would probably be, if nothing was stopping me, I love acting a lot. I'm not like a great actor, but it would be so cool to like, I wouldn't watch my own movies, but I like the building of characters and like, story and whatnot. Like I'm a really big movie guy. Do you have one, Miriam?
Yeah, I'm planning on being a nurse. So the reason that I kind of picked that was just because I'm a big person that likes to help people, don't like to see people that are hurt. And so like a dream job would be to like be in a very impoverished area and to have like supporters that would be able to fund having like a healthcare center in just an area where people wouldn't necessarily normally have access to healthcare. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. So obviously we're talking about credit, but we do kind of need to talk a little bit about what credit actually is. So credit, the official definition of it is the provision of money, goods, or services with the expectation of future payment. Another way to think about it, like just kind of to break it down a little bit, is like I give you $100 and I'm like, hey, I'm giving this to you now, but I want the $100 back. I'm giving you $100 of credit because like you can spend that money, but you're gonna have to pay me back. So it's not free money. Credit is not free money. Just because your credit limit is $300 does not mean that now you have $300 to never have to think about again. Like you're gonna have to pay that back.
Yeah.
And so one of the big things that credit is oftentimes used for is it'll be used for bigger purchases that like you might not have the cash for in hand. Like most people will never have the cash for in hand, like a house or cars or other expensive items. But you do need to pay it back. If you don't pay it back, your credit score will suffer. And if you just put it off, then you'll end up probably having the interest build up. So something to really, really keep in mind when you get credit is this is not free money that just, I get it out of nothingness and I have nothing to do with it. Like it's stuff that you're still gonna have to pay for that, even if you use credit. So
think of it like if you say you gave your cousin $200 and you say, all right, you got a month to pay me back. And if you don't pay me back the full amount, I'm gonna hit you with some interest. Yeah, I'm gonna hit you with 5% interest, right? Pay that money back. Don't play around with company's money because you will suffer for it financially. All right, next one, are credit cards bad? Actually, I wanna ask the question in the chat. Feel free to jump in with, any any feedback or anything like that if you want to say something. But who here thinks credit cards are bad?
Yeah, and this could be something that like you're like, this isn't my opinion, but I've heard from somebody else that they think, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Anybody. It doesn't matter if there's no right or wrong answers here. We're here to learn together. Who here thinks credit cards are bad?
Just put in the chat like they're bad or they're good.
Demetrius Griffin, he said, I feel like it's a setup. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Anybody else? Excellent. Thank you, Demetrius. I feel like they can be kind of stupid. Absolutely, they can be. It can be bad and good. Absolutely. But yeah, so these are all really, really good answers. But you may have been told by an adult or an older peer that getting a credit card isn't a good idea, right? You may have had people telling you that it's a great idea, right? That you should definitely get a credit card. At this age, we're kind of walking on a tightrope of like beginning to make decisions like, oh, what is this going to be? What is that going to be? We're kind of in the middle on our opinions. So we're going to be answering, is credit a bad thing? No, credit is not a bad thing. It's actually good to have a credit card or two, just as long as you're responsible with them, right? Credit isn't bad. Irresponsibility is bad. You have to be responsible with the credit card, with the loan, with whatever you are given that is on credit. Because if you don't, you will financially suffer for it. But you're here and we're going to teach you about the ways to avoid those financial woes and how to avoid being in, a negative zone when it comes to your credit.
Yeah.
See what? Yeah. Kiara said credit cards are useful because they improve how much trust companies put in you when you don't have the money up front. Absolutely. How to build it? Well, we're going to be learning it. We're going to be, getting into it and get into the nitty gritty of how to build credit, what it takes to build credit. Like, these are really, really good questions. And I'm happy that we got these people in here because, a lot of people, I remember last year I did this presentation and there was like way less people, way more people that had no understandings or no kind of care about it, just here for, an incentive. So I'm happy to see this.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about credit score. It's something that we had mentioned. It's going to be something that we're going to be mentioning in the future. So it's really something to like kind of start getting in your brain. So the credit score is a numerical scale from 300 to 850, and that represents the credit worthiness of an individual. So like someone said in the chat, if you have a credit card and you're responsible with it, it builds up trust with other people that you're going to pay their money back. So it's with the credit score, it's the same thing. If you have a 300 credit score, they're like, they're not going to give me my money back. So why should I give them money? Because that just means I'm going to lose money. If you have an 800, then they're like, oh, this person is going to pay me money back. I'm going to be making money, or like they're going to be giving me my money back. So I'm not going to be losing any money. So like, let me go ahead and give them this loan. A way you can kind of think of it is almost like it's your report card. If you have, if you're not doing too well in school and like you got F's and D's on your report card, like that's almost like having like 400 credit score or something. Like you're not doing that great, and like maybe some stuff has happened to you that caused you to get to that place, and like just that is some some bad stuff happened to you to get to that place. But like if you showed someone your report card and was like, what do you think of me, just looking at their report card, they're like, you're not the best person, like it doesn't look like you're super responsible. If you give them a report card with all A+, they're going to be like, I like it. And it's the same thing with credit scores. If you have a higher credit score, companies are more likely to trust you because that's really what they're going off. And Joseph, yes, everyone will get this PowerPoint at the end. So We're not going to think on everybody taking 5 pages of notes just to try and remember this information, because we recognize credit, it can be a little dry and it's a lot to go through in one night.
Yeah. We also want to make the point of recognizing, like, we think we're past scores. I hope you all can hear me. We often think that we're past scores. Once we graduate from high school, it's like, oh, no more scores, no more this, that, and the other. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The credit score is very important, and arguably more important than your grades in high school, because it determines all the things that you can do really financially. Because most of us will not be able to touch the cash on hand that's needed to buy a house, or a car, a brand new car, or something of that nature, right? So, these, and another thing to point out too, I've heard people saying like, oh, but these people, I've met with a lot of people, I've met with them and they all say I'm cool or whatever, but they don't do anything. And your credit score is what's going to ultimately speak for you, right? These people don't know you personally. And your credit score is ultimately what is the only gauge that they get of your personality, who you are, right? And if they see you have a lower credit score, they're going to see, oh, this person, they're going to think this person's irresponsible, this person's that, this person's this. We can't trust them with the money that they are asking for. So they'll deny you, or if they do, they'll charge you with a heavier amount of interest, which is something that we will be getting more into.
Yeah, so the people that can look at your credit score are lenders, like bank or credit card company. You're trying to go buy that card, they're going to be able to look at your credit score. And so they'll use your credit score as a way to determine the risk of lending money, because they want to prevent losses. They don't want to lose money. They don't want to be like you when you gave your cousin $20 and the cousin never gave it back. Like, they don't want to be that. They don't want to lose that money. And so those are the main ones that people usually think of, but those aren't the only people that can look at your credit score. Insurance companies, landlords, government departments, for utilities, like, they can look at your credit score as well. And if, like, with utilities, with insurance, they can charge you like an extra fee, because they're like, we want to make sure that, if they miss a month, that we're not losing money. So it always goes back to, the higher the credit score, the more trustable, the more likely people aren't going to lose money. Because people don't want to lose money. Like, bottom line, they don't want to lose money. A company never wants to lose money. You don't want to lose money. Like, so the bottom line is, the higher the credit score, the less likely, somebody is to, lose money. And so the higher the credit score, the more they're going to trust you, the more likely they're going to be to give you money.
All right. So here we have the elements of a credit score. Who here has any idea of what makes up a credit score? If they even knew that there was a numerical element that made up a credit score? Did anybody know that? I didn't when I first started learning about this at all. Harmony said she did. I wonder how Harmony knew that. Man, I wonder how Harmony Hudson, youth ambassador, knew that. Caleb did. Didn't know until last week.
Yeah, that's something that people don't realize, because it's just like, you think everything, like, you hear about certain things being bad for it and whatever, but you don't really think about like how bad it's going to be until like you actually really start looking into it. Like for me personally, before I really started studying credit, it was like, oh, probably how much you use your credit cards affects it the same amount as like how long you've had your credit cards or whatever. Like, I didn't realize that, there was something that affected it this much and this much. Yeah, I thought it just kind of all affected it the same way. So that's definitely a misconception. And we'll definitely be spending a little while on this slide, because this is a very important one.
Definitely. So the elements that make up a credit score, we keep in mind, not everything affects your credit score the same way as seen here. Some have a higher percentage, and let's get into it. The payment history making up 35% of it, which is the greatest bit. Basically, what that means is, how much are you paying? Are you paying back the loan, right? Are you paying your credit card bill? That is the most important element of your credit score. It shows lenders that you are going to pay them back, right? It shows that you're responsible with your finances. If your payment history is bad, you are not getting a loan, regardless, right? You're not getting a loan. An example of this, what's a good example of this? If, once again, you let somebody, would you let somebody borrow $100 from you if they borrowed $100 from your cousin and his friend and her sister, and they didn't pay him back? Would you let that person borrow $100 from you? No, you wouldn't let them borrow any money from you at all, right? Payment history has a very, 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 very profound effect on your credit score.
Yeah, we have a lot of no's in the chat. And so, yeah, that's the biggest thing that you get, that's the biggest takeaway you can have is like, you know, think about it even with just like the simple logic, like in your brain, like if you have somebody that you know has taken money from a lot of people and never given it back, you're not going to trust that person. Like you're not going to be giving money to that person because you're not going to trust them whatsoever. And it's the same way with credit card companies and lenders and stuff like that. Is if they see that, you know, you never paid any of these people back, they're like, well, what right do we have to believe that they're going to pay us back?
Exactly that. The next one is credit utilization, right? How much of your credit are you using, essentially, right? You get, obviously, there's 100% breakup of everything, right? If you have a credit card and you have a what's a balance, a good balance for a credit card? Yeah, like $1,000 or something like that.
When you first get a credit card, it's not going to be 1,000, but it's just a nice even number.
How much of that you're using plays a very, very big role, right? So say you use $900 of your $1,000 credit limit. You've used 90% of that balance, or of that of your credit, right? You've used 90% of that. Does that make you look responsible? If you've used 90% of what was given to you, does that make you look responsible in the eyes of lenders? This is an open-ended question. Feel free to answer. Do you think that if somebody, yeah, seeing a lot of no's, very good. That's what I like to see. No, it doesn't, right? Credit utilization is something that is usually meant to be under 30%, right?
And I do want to mention really quick that this was something that, like, even though I've been looking at this for like weeks, that I just noticed is credit utilization is 30% of your credit score. Yeah. And what it's supposed to, your credit utilization is supposed to be at 30% or lower.
Exactly.
So that's just, again, another way to keep it. Yeah, another way
right?
to keep it in your mind of like, oh, okay.
But in truth, the lower your utilization is, the faster your score can raise, right? And we'll be getting into that a little bit more. But main point of this story, make sure that your utilization is low, right? Preferably under 30%.
Yeah, so something I just want to say real quick is that, you know, obviously not every single time are you going to be able to keep it at around 30% and or lower or whatever. But something to keep in mind is like, you know, you need to use it, because if it's just sitting in your pocket, that's not going to do anything because you're not proving anything. You're not proving that you're responsible because it's just sitting there. You don't have any money to pay back. So like they're not seeing that you're paying it back. So you have to use it, but you want to try and use it just a little bit, like a Netflix subscription or something like that, that you know you're going to have the money to pay for. You know that every month you're going to get that, $5 that, or whatever that you need to pay. You're going to have the money for it. And so, even to set up like automated billing, where all you have on that credit card is your Netflix subscription, and you set it up automatically to where when it comes due, $5 is going to be sent from your bank account to the credit card company. And so that'll keep your utilization really low, and that'll make your credit score go up quite nicely. So, just keep in mind that they don't want you, they want it in the sweet spot in the lower middle of using it, but not abusing it.
Yeah. And another really good point to make with that, we'll be going into some ways to build your credit quickly. I know that at this point in time, people, we want to build our credit pretty fast. There are some ways to do it, but we'll be getting into it a little bit later. And then there's also length of credit history, right, which makes up 15%. However much credit, how long you've had the credit, right? It's a relatively small part of the credit score makeup because of the fact that, at least for us, right, because we're younger people, we're not going to have 10 years worth of credit card usage because of the fact that most of us 10 years ago all of us 10 years ago were children, right? That is not as important, but it's still important, right? It shows that you're responsible. Once again, it all comes back to responsibility. It shows that, oh, this person has had this card for a really long time. They haven't canceled it. They haven't did anything like that. Canceling cards actually makes you look bad in the eyes of lenders, right? It makes you feel like, it makes them think, oh, this person's irresponsible. This person, gets things in their name and then just cancels them and blah, 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 blah. Like, it isn't good, right? And it can be harmful to your credit score. It is harmful to your credit score. However, if you do have to cancel a card, I recommend canceling the most recent one, because if you cancel an older card, it lowers your length of credit history, because length of credit history is averaged between lines of credit. Like they average that out. And then another 10% makes up new credit. If you have any new cards or anything of that nature, new loans, it's pretty much self-explanatory. If anybody has any issues or anything, feel free to bring it up, but it's just like new lines of credit. And then your credit mix. So how many lines of credit do you have? The installment and revolving credit. Installment being credit that is like an example is like a house loan, right? If you get a house and you have to pay that loan back, it's the same amount every month, right? A revolving is like, if you have a credit card, you have to pay what you spent, right? If you spent $5 one month, you just pay that $5. But the next month, say you spend $200, or the next balance, you spend $200, then you would have to pay that $200. Yeah.
All right, so moving on to the next slide. Sorry we kept you guys so long on that one, but that's a really, really important one.
Very important.
So we just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit. So we're going to talk a little bit about good and bad credit, but I also want to mention real quick that since all of us in here are like relatively young, you may not have credit, and that is not a bad thing. Like, not having credit is not a bad thing. Is better to have no credit than bad credit. Because I mean, think about it. When you're if you're 18 and you know that like you could go get a credit card and then you would just be maxing it out and not paying your bills, you're gonna run your credit score into the ground, and that's not gonna be a good thing. It's better to start out having no credit than having poor credit or bad credit. So like if you're 19 and you're like, I'm hearing all this stuff about how I need to build credit. And so you're like, I guess I should, get a credit card. If you don't think you're going to be responsible with it, please don't, because it's not going to work out well for you. Please only, begin to get credit products if you know that you're going to be responsible with it. You're going to be able to deal with it well. But for those of you that have credit, or for those of you that are like really looking at getting credit, just for future knowledge, so 579 or lower is considered poor credit, where a lot of times banks and lenders won't give you the loan, or if they do, they're going to charge you sky high interest, and you're going to end up paying back like twice the amount you originally took out. And then 690 or higher is considered good credit, where they're probably going to give you a loan and you're probably going to pay back about the amount that you started out with. And someone in the chat says it's easier to build. It's easier to build credit than it is to rebuild. And that's very true. Once you get down to like, if you get down to like a 450, like that's going to be a struggle to rebuild, especially if you have a whole bunch of stuff on your credit report that's talking about like all these bad things in your past. But if you start out with, you know, if you have a clean slate, then it's pretty easy to begin building it pretty quickly.
I would say another thing that I like to note on that last one, we sort of changed the range a little bit for everybody because we're younger people. You know, we're not gonna have, like, if we do have credit, it's not gonna be, a lot of people, you know, our age is not gonna have over 720 or something of that nature, which is why we said 690 or higher, because, and, you know, other lenders might say, you know, 7 something or higher. We're younger people. So if you're a person that has credit and you're over 690 or something like that, you're doing a good job, right? Next slide. How does credit affect our lives? This is a very, 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 very important question, right? A lot of people don't realize that credit affects our lives in the following ways, right? You need a good credit score because it affects your ability to get a loan, right? It affects your ability to get a good interest rate on that loan, right? Which is arguably more important than getting a loan, because I'd rather not get a loan than have a loan and, you know, it's 23% interest or something like that. To get private student loans, right? Say you have, you know, you really want to get your PhD, right? But the federal student loans aren't cutting it, and you know, you're not able to do this, that, and the other, and you need to get a private student loan. Well, if your credit score isn't very good, they might not allow you to get that, or if they do, the interest rate. To get insurance and or utilities, insurance companies are the worst, and they are always looking for a return back on what they got, which is why they can be so difficult. So they definitely are checking credit scores to make sure that the people that they're representing have good credit and are responsible. To get an apartment or a house, right? Landlords can check your credit. They can run your credit to see if you're going to be a good tenant. They base, you know, obviously, once again, they don't know you. So they will say, oh, this person's got a, you know, 540 credit score. I'm not about to rent my place out to them. Like, crazy? No. A house as well, right? To get a loan on a house, you're going to need a good credit score in order to make sure that that interest rate isn't crazy, so that you can afford that home. To get a car, once again, you're gonna have to pay for that car, the interest rate. And it's what we're gonna keep emphasizing: interest. Interest is the most important thing. That if you take nothing away from this, take away this: the better your credit score, the lower your interest rate will be. If you have a high credit score, your interest rate will be lower, and you will ultimately save yourself a lot of money, as opposed to somebody who has a really low score who is going for the same car. They're going to ultimately end up paying more money. And we'll get into that in a later activity. To get a job. This one was crazy, right? This one blew my mind. When I found out that you needed a higher credit score to get certain jobs, I was mind blown. I was like, why would that be? Why would that be? Well, I'll tell you why. There are some jobs that require a lot of responsibility, right? If you have a job that it might be a federal job, right? Dealing with a lot of money, right? They will check your credit score because they want to make sure they usually, people who have lower credit scores based off of statistics, which can be biased, as we know, they are a little bit less financially responsible, and they they don't want to risk somebody robbing them or taking that money away, right? They would rather give the more responsibility driven jobs to people who have higher credit scores. and to get different rewards with a credit card. Credit cards, when you first start off, are pretty, run of the mill. You get money, and you can use that credit, and you have to pay it back at the end of the month. But as you build your credit, you will get different kinds of credit cards that will be offered to you. For example, I got my first credit card last year. I used that for a year, built my credit up really well, and then I was able to get the Capital One Quicksilver card, which offers 1.5% cash back on all purchases, right? It's not the craziest card in the world, but it's better for me, if I do have to spend money, I can get cash back on it. So those are the following reasons why there's a lot of good stuff in there.
All right, so moving on to the next slide. We already kind of touched on this a little bit, but I do want to talk a little bit about installment loans versus revolving credit. So installment loans are scheduled payments that eventually you pay off the money that was owed, and then revolving credit is borrowing money, repaying it, and spending it again. So, with your credit card, if you have a limit of $300, that's for every month. So, you might spend $100 on that credit card every month. You might spend $100 one month and $5 the next month. It can vary, and you can borrow it and then spend it and then borrow it and then borrow it, spend it, repay it. Maybe you're paying it. Borrow it, spend it, repay it, borrow it, spend it, repay it. It's a never-ending cycle of you can do that for the rest of your life, and it can be for multiple different amounts. But with installment loans, it's a set payment for every single month that eventually you'll stop paying. Because eventually, you're going to pay off that car note, you're going to pay off that mortgage, stuff like that. So when we talk about credit mix, it's just saying if you have a car note and a mortgage, then those are both installment loans. And so you have two different kinds of credit, or you have two different things on your credit report, but it's not, an installment and a revolving. So it's best to have some sort of a mixture of those, to have a car note and a couple of credit cards, or a car note, a mortgage, and a credit card, or something like that, something to that effect, to where you have a few lines of credit with some varying with installment and revolving, because it's very, it all comes back to whether or not they want to see that you're responsible with your money. It all comes back to that. So, they want to see it's very easy to, maybe it's very easy for you to remember that, every single month I got to pay $300 on my car note, but it might not be so easy to remember, did I put something on my credit card? How much was it that I had to pay off, whatever. Whereas with other people, they may forget about paying their car note, but they're going to remember to pay off their credit card because they're using it every couple of days. It's just, they want to see that you're responsible with multiple different types, multiple different things. So, honestly, it just comes back to, they want to see that you're responsible with your money.
Okay, so I know you guys probably remember, maybe not, me bringing up that car example, right? Well, this is that in action, right? Buying a car with poor versus good credit. So this is the scenario. Person A and person B work the same job, make the same amount of money, and they both want to buy the same 2020 Honda Accord for $25,000 with a down payment of $1,000. You're probably not going to find a 2020 Honda Accord for $25,000, but bear with us. Person A has a credit score of 580 and plans on taking out a 5-year loan, right? Person B has a credit score of 720 and plans on also taking out a 5-year loan.
So real quick, I want to see if people can put out in the chat who they think is going to end up paying more in the end. Do you think person A is going to end up paying more in the end, or person B is going to end up paying more in the end? Yeah, person A, because they have the lower credit score.
Yeah. Now let's just see how much more they're going to be paying. So without looking at interest, these people should be paying around $400 a month to have their car paid off in 5 years. Person A, because of their credit, has an interest rate of 16%. And will be paying $584 a month. So in total, they will have paid $11,018 in interest.
That's just interest, y'all. That's not paying for the car. That's just interest.
That's just interest, right? Person B, because of their credit, has an interest rate of 5.5%, and we'll be paying $458 a month. And in total, they'll have paid $3,505 in interest. Would you rather be paying $11,000 or $3,000? Which one? Which one it would be better for you? It's a 2020 Honda Accord. Yeah, sure. It's a new car. Exactly. You'd rather be paying the $3,000. I know I would.
Okay. So
Cool car animation.
let's look at how much more. So I want to have just the total numbers in here because I think it's really just like mind-boggling to like look at the actual numbers. So remember, this car, again, like it's not super realistic with the way cars are going right now that you're gonna find one for 25,000. But for this example, it's 25,000. And so in the end, the total with like just the paying for the car and the interest that the two people paid for, person A pays $36,018 for a $25,000 car. Person B pays $28,505 for that $25,000 car. So I want someone to pull up the calculator on their phone, on their laptop, out of their desk drawer, and tell me how much more person A paid than person B for that car. Yeah, $7,513.
Yeah.
That is so much more, you guys, and that is just interest. And if we're being perfectly honest, the credit score that we had them have, it's honestly, it's not that bad. A credit score of 580, like, remember, the lowest credit score you can have is a 300. So 580, like, I've seen worse credit scores than that. And the lower your credit score is, the higher the interest will be. So that means, the more that you will be paying off for this car. So like, if you have a credit score like that right now, that's fine. Let's work towards fixing that. But if you don't have credit, which a lot of you guys don't, keep in mind that when you get credit, you want to be responsible with it because you don't want to tie up future money. This person was buying a car for $25,000 and they ended up paying an extra $7,500 about just because, so that's money that they don't get to use on other things. The person B has that $7,500 to, go buy, some nice shoes, nice bag or a new phone or whatever. They have that money to spend. Person A doesn't have that anymore because their credit score wasn't as good. So just be responsible, y'all.
When you think about it, person A paid for that car and basically a used car, right? They paid $11,000 extra dollars. We cannot stress this enough. Interest is a lot. It is a lot, right? We need to make sure that we understand this. Interest can be crazy. And you can end up paying for a brand new car or a new car and what the cost of a used car with how much you end up paying in interest. Moral of the story, be careful with your credit score and value it and take care of your finances. Now we have another activity, very fun little activity. We're going to be deciding whether something is a good credit activity or a bad credit activity. Now this is interactive. So we want everybody to participate. You can, say something out loud or you can jump in the chat. But yeah, we're going to be going through it.
Yeah, you can put a thumbs up in the chat. You can put a thumbs down in the chat. You can say good, you can say bad, just whatever,
Exactly.
Whatever you want to say, just as long as it makes sense as to which one you think it is.
Exactly. All right, so the first one, you decide to buy a new phone. Your credit limit on your credit card is $1,000 and you spend $900 buying it. Is this good credit activities or bad credit activities? Huh? Bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's decent.
Demetrius, what kind of credit have you been learning about?
Decent. We want to say this is bad credit activity, right? You want to not spend more than 30%. Once again, you want to make sure you're not spending more than 30% of your credit limit, right? When you get on and you spend, if you have $1,000 credit limit and you're spending $900 of it, you just spent 90% of your credit, right? Your balance is now $900, right? And you also have to think, how am I going to pay for this $900 credit card balance at the end of when my balance is due?
And
Right?
keep in mind that interest is going to be building.
Yeah, absolutely, right? However, still pay. We're going to be getting into it a little bit more when it comes to paying your cards. You want to always make sure that you're able to pay the balance. But if you can't do that, pay the minimum at least, right? Try to your best to avoid the minimum payment trap. If you have the money to pay the balance, pay the balance. If you don't, then it's okay. Just pay the minimum because your payment, once again, that payment history is a very important, is the biggest part of your credit score maker. So yeah, but try not to spend that amount of money on a card. Next question or scenario. You put small monthly payments like your Netflix subscription on your credit card. Good credit activity or bad credit activity? Good. G. Yeah, thumbs up, thumbs up. For sure. Yeah, I'm glad we're on the same page here. Small monthly payments like your Netflix subscription, that's really good, right? It's something that you know isn't going to be a ton of money, right? What if you forget about it? Well, there's an easy way to not forget about it. You can have your card set to auto pay, right? I know I have Capital One. I have the Capital One app on my phone, and I have auto pay set up. And I also have it written on my virtual calendar on my phone. So I have card balance due written up there. I get up in the morning and I see that on my phone, my balance is due today. So I'm like, fine. Huh? I mean, you can. Some people get a bill in the mail as well. But setting up auto pay is really good. And also you have to think Netflix subscriptions they're kind of expensive now, but they're not super expensive to the point where they would be a majority of your line of credit. So it would keep your utilization really low, which is another thing that's really important.
Something that I want to say real quick is that so like with the after so long of building your credit, like if you've had a credit card for a couple of years and you've been really responsible with it, they will up your limit. So you may start out with like a $200 limit because they're like, we don't want to give this young person too much money. We don't want to lose money. Again, always comes back to banks don't want to be losing their money. And so, if you've been responsible with it for a couple of years, all of a sudden you might find that your credit limit is now $500. And so you can spend a little bit more of that money. You might start spending when, you go and you get groceries sometimes. And then after a couple of years, it might up again. And if you keep being responsible with it, keep paying it on time, your credit score keeps going up, you're going to have a higher and higher limit. Like you might get to the point where the limit on your credit card is like $5,000. And then you can use it, for a lot of stuff because, you can use like $1,000 of that because you've been careful with it and whatever. So that's just something to keep in mind is that, you may start out only being able to put, the Netflix subscription on there because you don't want to spend too much on your credit card. But eventually it will get to the point where you can put bigger payments on the credit card. And if it has like cash back or whatever, you can reap those benefits while still keeping your credit score at a good place.
Yeah, and I also want to point. Usually they'll ask you before they just give you that money. You'll have to go through a little process. It's not like crazy, but they'll ask you and all that. So they'll send you some info like, hey, you applied for a credit limit raise, blah blah blah. You spent next activity. You spend $100 of your $200 credit card limit, but you pay it down before the balance is due. Good credit activity or bad credit activity? Very good, very good. Good credit, good credit. Yeah, so that's the main thing that we're talking about, paying what you have to pay. You always want to make sure that your payment history is great. You know, the better that makes you look responsible, makes you look good. Make sure that you are paying when you need to pay, when your balance is due. Can't stress it enough.
Yeah, so you'll notice that you're spending $100 of your $200 limit. So that means you spent over that 30% line. You spent 50% of what you could spend on your credit card, but you paid it off before the balance is due. So it's there's going to be times when you get that credit card where it's like, oh shoot, I don't get paid till Friday and I need to go grab some bread and some milk or something like that. I don't know. You need to go grocery shopping because you're out of food. And so you need to use your credit card and you can't pay it off till Friday. But that's fine. Like, we're not saying like you should just never use your credit card ever. Like, we understand that there are emergencies that happen sometimes, but just, pay off as much as you can. Pay it off before the balance is due, because you can do that. You can pay it off before they let you know, like, hey, your balance is due. You can pay it off before. And then when they report, they're going to be like, oh, this person only has $50 because you paid off some of it, or they report and it's like, oh, this person has $0 sitting in their account. And also, something that I do want to stress really quickly: you do not have to keep like a little balance in your account. Pay it off. Pay it off. It is good to pay it off. Like, you do not have to keep that $5 in there, because that's going to collect interest. Absolutely. And we don't like interest. Interest is not our friend.
I've heard people say that a lot. I'm very glad Miriam brought that up. You do not have to carry a balance on your cards. Don't carry a balance on your cards. If you have a card that you got a year ago and you get a new card and it's got rewards and stuff on it, you don't have to say, I'm not going to pay this card down because I don't want them to not, to think I'm not using it. Don't leave balances on your cards. Don't do that. Now, last bad or good credit activity. You use your credit card with a $200 limit when you go out to eat. You spend $100 and you pay off half when the balance is. Cash back more interest. Let me answer this right quick. No, cash back is not more interest. Cash back just means that however much money you spend, you get a percentage cash back for, that you can turn into your own, like, liquid cash or flight rewards or stuff like that. Like, use it with Amazon, whatever, like that's basically what cash back is.
Cashback is good.
Cash back is good. Interest, bad. You use your credit card with a $200 limit when you go out to eat. You spend $100 and you pay off half when the balance is due. Good or bad credit activities? Bad. Let's see. Anybody else? It's a confusing one, right? It's on purpose. We did this to confuse you. We did this to jumble your brains. Harmony says it's bad. Okay. Good. Bad. Okay, I like this. We divided. We're like, we're not really sure. All right, well, we'll answer it for you right now, right? This kind of depends, right? If you maybe you don't have $100 when your balance is due, you just have that 50, right? If you pay that 50, right, that's good, right? That's a good thing, right? You want to always, we want to emphasize, hey, we'd rather pay something than nothing, right? Because once again, payment is the biggest part. Are you repaying? That's the biggest part of your credit score makeup, right? But if you got that full amount of money and you just put $50 on there, then obviously that's irresponsible. But ultimately, paying is way more important than anything else, right? But and also you have a little bit of a grace period before the bureau's report, right? Because even on the day of your balance, that's just when the balance is due, right? They don't report until maybe until quite a few days after, right? So main thing, pay your balance. So this was a tricky one, right? This was kind of, it depends.
All right, yeah, and something that I do want to mention is like, if you say you have that $100 and you like, well, I'm going to pay $50 of it now, and I'm going to save that $50, to go out to eat with my friends. I'm going to save that to do something with. If you don't pay off that $100 right away, you let it sit there, and so you still have $50 sitting there. That's going to build interest, and you're going to end up having to pay off more than $50. So like that $50 that you were like, oh, I want to keep this to spend it, that's gone, plus some extra money. So it's always better to just pay it off right then and there, because then you're going to end up saving yourself money in the long run.
If you have the money to do so. Don't still pay, but pay the minimum or as much as you can.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about building credit with credit cards. This is specifically for people that like, you don't have any credit right now, which is what we're assuming quite a few of you are. So one of the things that you can do is you can get listed as an authorized user on a trusted adult's credit card. And you won't necessarily have your own credit card, and you'll only be benefited by this if the person is responsible. I cannot stress this enough. Do not, absolutely do not get put on a person's credit card. Be like, hey, mom, I want to be an authorized user on your credit card, if you don't know what the person's credit is like. So there's an organization called Prosperity Connection. You can go down there and get a free credit report. They'll show you your credit report, and they'll show you your credit score. That's the organization that's going to be coming here and doing the credit fair here next Wednesday. So like, would highly encourage you to connect with them. So like, if you want to possibly get on your, your mom's credit card, or an aunt's credit card or something like that, like, take them down there, be like, okay, let's check the credit. And if the person, if they have like, a 700 credit score, get listed as an authorized user, because then you can start building credit. And this is a, trustable person that's going to benefit you. You don't want to be listed on your mom's credit card just blindly, and then she ends up having, a 500 credit score, and that negatively affects you. So definitely make sure you know in depth about this person's credit score before you get listed as an authorized user.
Yeah, and once again we're gonna plug this one more time. Camille has a link in the chat. I added that earlier in the chat as well. So if you don't see it there, there's also one earlier. We are doing a credit fair on Wednesday, July 27th. It'll depend. There will be one here, but it'll depend on based off of who is your job provider, MERS, whatever. Yeah, so you should have gotten we'll also be emailing you and following up with you guys after this. But yeah, it's from 5 to 8. Please sign up. Yeah.
All right, so back to talking about building credit with credit cards. So another option for beginning to build credit is to get a secured card. So what happens with a secured card is you give a deposit. So like, if you're getting, like a lot of times when people get a secured card, they'll get it through their bank. So if you go up to your bank and you give them a deposit, and then they'll give you a credit card, and you can use it pretty much like a normal credit card. And after like a year or so, if you prove yourself with it, you get that initial deposit back, and you can use it just like a regular card. So this is a great option when you're first beginning, because you're giving them a deposit of money so they know that they're not losing their money. That's what they care about. In the end, they don't want to lose their money. And so they know they're not going to be losing their money because you gave them that deposit. But then if you're responsible, you get that money back. So you don't have to worry about, like, oh, to build credit, I'm going to be out $500. Like, initially, like, it's going to be sitting there. So like initially you're not going to have that 500, 200, 300, 500, whatever, they ask for the deposit, but you're going to get it back. You're not going to be losing it forever. And so this is just a great way when you're first starting to really help build that trust in the beginning.
All right. We also have building credit with credit builder loans, right? So a credit builder loan is another way to begin building credit at an early level. The way they work is that you give the bank an amount of money that you're borrowing, and then you make monthly payments back to them. And if in the end you make all the payments, you get that money back, and you gave the bank, and you will be raising your credit score, right? So essentially, this is something that a lot of people use to build or rebuild their credit scores. So even after all these things, you might not have a magically good credit score, right? Because these things take time. I've started with my credit journey last year, and it took me a year to get to the place that I'm at with my credit score. And it's still not as good as I would want it to be, right? I'm not going to tell y'all my credit score because I don't do that, but
Not a good idea.
not a good idea.
Don't
Pro
go
tip,
around.
Don't tell
especially-
people your credit score.
Especially if your credit score is good.
It's
Like,
good,
don't go
yeah.
around telling people your credit score, because then they're going to be like, hey, can I take this out in your name? And
Yeah.
then they're going to bring both of you down.
Absolutely. So yeah, even after doing all these things, it isn't going to be a magically good score, but you're taking the steps towards building your credit, which is exactly what we want you to do.
And I do want to mention real quick about what something on this page is. A lot of times with the credit builder loans, you don't even necessarily have to give the bank the amount of money that you're borrowing. A lot of times you're just making monthly payments, but it depends on the bank. And also, if you excuse me for a second, I'm going to have to move my laptop because it just told me that it's dying. Yeah, I'm gonna move on to the next slide, and Cozy will share that with you guys.
All right. We get these questions a lot. I'm very excited. You guys forgive me. We get these questions a lot, right? How do I fix my bad credit score? How do I take the steps towards doing that, right? Well, as we stated, credit scores are something that take time to build up, but they can be brought down easily, right? It takes a minute to bring them up. It takes moments to drop it, right? How do you fix a bad credit score? You need to keep your credit card occasionally. Use your credit card occasionally, just as long as you keep your monthly usage below 30% of the card's limit. Remember how I told y'all that we're gonna tell y'all how to build that credit score quickly? Well, here it is. You want to raise your credit quickly using less than 10% of your credit limit helps you build credit faster, right? This is because it's at that sweet spot of utilization, right? They're like, oh man, this person's not using really any of this, right? They're really, really responsible. They're using their own cash, you know what I'm saying? But they are using it, right? That makes you look really responsible in the eyes of lenders. Yeah, so credit hack, using less than 10% of your available credit. You want to also try your best not to keep making inquiries or getting new loans and cards, or don't try your best. Don't do that. Don't keep making inquiries. Don't get new loans and new cards like in quick succession of each other, because hard inquiries drop your credit score. Not a crazy amount, just a few points, but in quick succession of each other, obviously that's a pretty significant amount. So focus on paying off the debt that you have right now in a timely manner, as opposed to getting new cards and new debt, because it's just the smarter, way to go about it. Let's see. Jordan Lloyd says, what about a place with free credit reports like Credit Karma? Credit Karma isn't terrible at all. There's a lot of ads. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good resource tool, but it's not the best place to get your credit score. So, like it gives you some, you can find a lot of good information about credit and how to, handle it and do well. There's also a lot of ads, which I don't really like. But there are a lot of ways to get a free credit report, particularly with Prosperity Connection. I'm gonna keep plugging that. But yeah, that's pretty much the entirety of that. Are there any more questions? I know this is a lot. It's also really important. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to speak out. Feel free to jump out.
Great, yeah, so go ahead and put the questions in the chat. We've got a little bit more to cover. A lot of what's going to be covered in the last couple of slides are resources for you guys. But we do want to make sure that questions are being answered and stuff like that. So something that Nkosi just mentioned was soft inquiries and hard inquiries and stuff like that. So the difference between a soft and a hard inquiry is a soft inquiry is usually when a person or company checks your credit as a part of a background check, and that doesn't affect your score. So it's like when your boss, you're about to be hired and he's like, no, let me make sure this person's going to be responsible. They're not going to get bribed and take that money. They're gonna do, be a responsible person. And if they, or that somebody shows up to them that's like, hey, I'll give you $200, and they're gonna be like, yeah, thanks, I'm good. So that's a soft inquiry because you're not getting any new credit. They're just checking it to to look at it and see how you're doing. A hard inquiry is when some sort of a lender checks your credit to see if they will give you the credit. Whether or not you get the credit, that's still going to affect your score for 2 years. So this is why you do not want to get, you don't want to go into, Kohl's or whatever and have them be like, hey, you want to get our store credit card? Don't do it, because it's another inquiry. If you get approved for it, you get denied for it. You accept it, you don't accept it, no matter what, it's going to show up on your credit report and negatively affect it. If you're going to Kohl's a couple times a year, there's no purpose in getting a Kohl's credit card. Like, there's no reason to do it. So kind of in summary, the difference between a soft inquiry and a hard inquiry is it's basically whether or not you're getting a new line of credit. If you're getting a new line of credit, you're trying to get a new line of credit, that's a hard inquiry. And if you're not trying to get a new line of credit, that's a soft inquiry. So like things like checking your credit report, that's a soft inquiry and you should do it because you're just checking and seeing what's on there. You're not trying to put something new on there.
All right, we got another activity for you guys. This is the hard versus soft inquiries activity. So try and remember what we just said previously with the difference between a hard inquiry and a soft inquiry. All right, so first scenario, you decide to go online and you want to check your credit report. Would that be a soft or hard inquiry? Soft, soft. Nice, nice, nice. We're all in agreement. Soft inquiry. Very good, very good. Yes, that would be a soft inquiry because you're not opening any new lines of credit or putting anything new into your name. You're just checking your credit report and getting some information for yourself. Next scenario, you go to Macy's and they offer you a credit card. You get approved for it, but you decide not to get it. Soft or hard inquiry? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very good, everybody. Yeah, if you are if you say, yeah, maybe, and then they check your score and they approve you for it, you decide not to get it, that still does affect your credit score. Still will drop your credit score by a couple of points. But it's totally fine to not get the card because ultimately, if you don't want to open a new line of credit for yourself, then don't. But that is, yes, a hard. Yeah. For the next one, unbeknownst shouldn't be there, but because you always give them permission, and if somebody puts something in your name that or checks your credit score without your knowledge, or checks your credit without your knowledge, particularly an employer, that's illegal. Yeah. If you didn't know about it, then it's illegal unless you signed something and weren't checking. But usually you will have to sign for that. But you apply for a job, and unbeknownst to you, your future employer decides to check your credit score rather than unbeknownst. You apply for a job and your future employer checks your credit score. It's soft, soft. Very good. Anybody else? Soft. Yeah. Yeah. So this would be definitely a soft inquiry. There are no new lines of credit being opened. Once again, it's just your employer trying to see what your credit score is. Next one. Your landlord checks your credit score to see if you will be a reliable renter. Soft or hard inquiry? Hard. Let's see. Anyone else? We got a hard. We got a hard. Soft. Soft, maybe. Soft. Saying a lot of soft. Soft? Yes, that would be a soft inquiry, right? So this is not anything that is being opened in your name. No new lines of credit, no new loans. This is just your landlord checking your credit score to see if you would be a reliable and responsible renter. Landlords often do this. Well, I don't know how often they do this, but the landlords do this. And this would be a soft inquiry as opposed to a hard inquiry because nothing else is being opened in your name, no new lines of credit, no new loans.
Yeah, so a way to think about it is, while you are paying stuff to your landlord every single month, you're not taking, it's different if your landlord checks it versus like a bank, so you can buy a house. Like if you have a house and you're making monthly payments on that house, in the end, you're gonna get that house, right? But if you're renting from a landlord, you're giving the landlord money every month so that you can live there. Like that's all you're getting. Like there's no loans involved or anything like that. It's just, hey, I want to live here for a month, so here's your $800. So because there's no like loan or anything like that involved in it, that's why it is a soft inquiry. But I knew that one was a little tricky, so I was kind of curious what people would say, because that one is a little hard to understand which one it's going to be. All right, so someone had mentioned checking the credit report on Credit Karma, but not advise that. But if you would like to check your credit report, we would highly advise checking checking annualcreditreport.com. So this is like the place to check for free. If you're by yourself at home, and you're like, I wonder what's on my credit report, I want to know what's on there, use annualcreditreport.com. Please make sure that it's annualcreditreport.com and not like free credit report or get your credit report for free or anything like that. They're lying. Don't do it. Annualcreditreport.com is the only site that you want to use. So this website allows you to check your credit report for free, and you won't be able to view your score, but you can kind of gauge what your score what kind of the range that your score might be by looking at what position you were in as far as like any debt. You know, if you're looking and you've got, 6 different credit cards, some you didn't even remember you had, and you got car notes that you haven't been paying and whatever, you can kind of be like, hey, that credit score's probably not that good. You got a couple credit cards and a car note, and you don't have any late payments listed on there, then you can be like, okay, I'm probably in a pretty good place. So it's recommended that you check your credit report at least once a year. And you get to check your credit report with each of the 3 credit bureaus for free once a year. So those 3 credit bureaus are TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. And believe it or not, TransUnion might have something that Equifax doesn't. So it's good to not just check one, but to check different ones, because your Experian might have, this credit card, and TransUnion's like, I don't got that, because they report to different, it can report to different credit bureaus. So make sure you're checking all of those. But depending on your circumstances, you may want to check it more often than that to catch errors. And through the end of the year, you can actually check it once a week. That was a COVID thing. It's just kind of been extended. So, don't get crazy over it. Don't obsess over it, because you don't want to be like, going crazy over it. It's just something that's good to do every few months. And again, checking your credit report, soft inquiry will not hurt your score. So please do it. And it's better to know what position you're in than to just be, in the dark. You don't want to be like, I think I'm in debt and I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to see it. So let me just, not deal with it. Please check. It's better to know what position you're in and move forward with a financial coach from Prosperity Connection than to, sit there not knowing what you're doing.
And I'd also like to point that once, as we said, you can check your credit report with 3 credit bureaus for free once a year, with each one for once for free. So if you game that out, that's what? Yeah, that's 4 times a year, or 3 times a year, every 4 months rather. So yeah, and Camille also made a really good point in the chat. Checking your credit report is a good way to find fraud or identity theft if that's happened to you, which is a lot more common than you think. So not to scare anybody, but yeah, definitely watch out for that. Sometimes people open things in our name when we're children, and then that affects us. And getting stuff like that disputed is good. Next slide. So what's on a credit report? So there are quite a few things that make up a credit report. That information is your personal information, like your address, your name. These things should be correct. Make sure that if you have a credit report that has all your proper identifying information. The amount of credit accounts you have, that speaks for itself. It's a credit report. Late payments, if you have been paying things late, then that is going to show up on your credit report. Your credit inquiries, so collection of soft and hard, or hard inquiries rather. Like if you got a new card or a new loan, that'll be showing up. Collections. Okay. Collections, anything that went to collections, like hospital bills, stuff like that. Yeah. And then bankruptcies, which, I'm sure everybody here has gone bankrupt at least once. It just happens to young people. No, hopefully you have no bankruptcies on your credit report. If not, get it disputed.
All right, I'm going to just run through a few slides right here of resources real quick. So Prosperity Connection, we have been plugging it all night, and we're going to keep doing it because it is a great resource. If you feel like you could use someone walking alongside of you as you begin your journey towards good credit, Prosperity Connection can help you out. I cannot stress enough that This is a great resource. You have free financial coaching, you have free credit report reviews. This is like, please do this. If you feel like you need help in any way, please check out Prosperity Connection. They are a great resource. Next one, somebody already mentioned this one, but Credit Karma is a good place to go for a helpful tool with credit problems. Like you can do, it's a good place to go for research. Again, there's going to be a lot of ads you don't need to be clicking on and stuff like that. But it's a good place to go for research and for any questions you have. Another resource is NerdWallet. This is really, really good if you're like planning on getting a credit card and you want a tool to research which is the best for you. You might be traveling a lot, and so you want one that has points for traveling. You might, go to the grocery store. You might have a family, and so you're going to be going to the grocery store, spending quite a bit there, and so you want one that benefits you doing that. You want to cater towards your needs, and so NerdWallet is a good website to go to that will allow you to compare different credit cards and see the cost of it versus the benefit of it.
Yeah, these here are just a collection of sites that we visited to get this information. We will be sending you all these slides, so you will have access to all of these websites if you go through them. Great Lakes, NerdWallet is on here quite a few times. Credit Karma is on here quite a few times. Wikipedia, Capital One. This is where we found this information. If you all want to dive a little bit deeper into it, then you can here.
Alrighty, so that is the end of the presentation, but we recognize that there's a lot of stuff that we went over, so if there's anything you didn't understand, you want to ask about, you can put that in the chat or raise your hand, or if you want to email us later, and Cozy and I are both youth ambassadors with STL Youth Jobs, so you can email us at ambassadors@stlyouthjobs.org. You can put that in the chat. So that is, okay. Is there no way to check your credit score for free multiple times? If you go to Prosperity Connection, they can pull your credit report for free and check your credit score. But online, a lot of times they will ask you to pay to see your credit score. And and checking your credit score, it's not something that's absolutely necessary. It's more important to see what's on your report, but obviously you want to see am I doing better and stuff like that. So I was going to say something to that effect.
Yeah, you definitely can check your credit score. You can go on Experian or Equifax, or I believe Equifax uses Advantage Score, but you don't have to pay. A lot of the times, the way that they market themselves is that, oh, you have to pay, and they'll put the paying member stuff on the forefront, but you do not have to pay. I check my credit score with Experian or Equifax all the time, and I never have paid them anything. But yeah, you do not have to.
But it's because you don't, it's your credit report.
Yeah, that's because you don't get your credit report with that. But I know my credit score. But you can get your credit report with Prosperity Connection and score with Prosperity Connection, and they will be here on July 27th from 5 to 8 p.m. So if you haven't signed up, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life right now? Just kidding. Do you all have any questions or anything else? And if you do, I'll answer them. But I have some stuff to really emphasize once more before all of this is over.
Yeah. So if you have any other questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. But because he's gonna just have a couple of things that he's gonna say, these are important things that we really want drilled into you guys' head before you head out. And there will be a survey that will be getting put in the chat that you will need to fill out so that you can get your money for coming here. So yeah, because he's gonna share just a couple more things, kind of reiterate some stuff, but keep putting stuff in the chat or raise your hand or whatever if you have a question that you want asked.
So the main thing I want everybody to understand, one, interest is not good, right? The lower the interest rate, the better, right? You do not want a high interest rate. Two, pay these people their money. When your balance is due, pay these people, right? Pay what you can. If that is the minimum, pay the minimum. Try not to get caught in the minimum payment trap where it's like you're paying the minimum every time around. But if you have to, if that's all you can pay it, right? Ultimately, they want their money. So pay. Those are really the main things that I would give anybody, main pieces of advice. Does applying for different credit cards affect your credit score? Yes, because that is a hard inquiry that will drop your score a little bit, whether or not you get approved for it. So even if you don't get approved for it, it will still drop your score. If you do, you can elect to get that card and move forward from there. Main thing, don't apply for multiple credit cards in quick succession because that will drop your score pretty tremendously and will make you look irresponsible to lenders. Good job. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Yeah. And we're sorry that this ran a little bit long, but this is a lot of information. It's really, really important. And I can't stress enough how good that this is, that so many young people, so many young Black people are in this chat right now, taking the steps towards learning about credit, something that has historically had a lot of, it's been a lot within our community, right? We have among some of the lowest credit scores in the country. But you all as young Black people learning about this, it is of the utmost importance and you're ahead of the game, really. So really give yourselves a pat on the back for taking the strides and taking the steps towards knowing about this. And that's all I have to say. If anybody has any more questions, I'll answer them, but for me, that's all. Got the survey in the chat. So you guys can do that survey and then, go on about your way. But thank you guys for showing up. This is the last youth ambassador affair, for lack of a better word, that we will be having. And we are very happy. We're very happy to have had you all along for the ride with us. We hope you've learned a lot, and because we know we have. Appreciate your time and the advice. Thank you so much. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming. We really, really do appreciate it. I know that you took some time out of your day to come here and learn about something that not a lot of people find interesting, but it is such a vital thing for life. So we really appreciate you guys coming in. We hope you learned something, and make sure you fill out that survey so you can be get that chance to win the gift cards and stuff. So definitely want to do that.
Thank you guys. We're very happy you guys learned. That's what I love to see. It's what I love to see.